Welcome everyone. We are going to start now the Computer Programming SWAE 3306 chapter number 6. In this chapter, we are going to concentrate on loops. In programming languages, including Visual Basic, it allows procedure to be repeated as many times as long as the processor could support. This is generally called looping. Many times you have to repeat a calculation or show the same message several times. And there are different types or formats to do looping. One is called for next loop, and the other format is do loop. We'll start with the for next loop. For next loop iterates for a fixed number of times. For next loops generally are easier to code when you need a loop that loops a certain number of times rather than one that loops based on a condition. Hence, you as a programmer can control the number of times the loop will repeat. Before starting with the format and how to code the looping in Visual Basic, let's just explain a little bit more on what is looping really is about. Let's say that I want to have a number that is incremented by 1 from 1 to 5. So I will have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. How would you have these numbers incremented from 1 or increased from 1 to 5 incremented by 1? You will add number 1, you will add 1 to the previous value to get a new value of 2, for example. You will add an increment of 1 to the previous value, which is 1 here, to will get the new number of 2. And then you will add again 1 to the previous value of 2 to get the new value of 3. 2 plus 1 is 3. Then you will do the same. You will add 1 to the previous value, which is 3. And 3 plus 1, you will get the new value of 4. And finally, you will do the same. You need to add 1 to the previous value, which is 4, to get the new value of 5. So what we have here, we have actually repeated the same increments and even the same steps of calculation by adding 1 to the previous value to get the new value. That is a loop. That is a loop. The format to code for next loop in Visual Basic: start with for, follow it with a variable counter, and this variable counter has a starting and ending number. So you have to specify what is the starting number and what is the end number. So this variable counter, you give it a range. It starts from what number and it ends at what number. If the increasing of the numbers from starting to the ending numbers is by an increment of more than 1, then you have to specify it here after typing step, and then what is your increment. However, if the increasing of the numbers from starting to the end is only by plus 1, then you don't need to write or to type step 1. This can be excluded, and then all numbers in the range will be increased by plus 1 by default, by plus 1 from starting to the end number of the range here. In the second line, you can type your Visual Basic statements, including where to show the output of this increasing of the variable counter. Since you started with the for, you are creating a block here, so you have to end it by closing the block with next. You follow the next by the name of the counter that you have named it after for. To translate what I'm saying here, let's go back to our example here, and let's bring the code format for the for next as we just described it. And let's apply it on this example here. The counter here is actually increasing from 1 to 5. So that is our counter. So the counter in this example is increasing from 1 to 5, and let's give it a name as a variable name, and let's call it as integer x. So int x. So this is the variable name for the counter, and we know that this counter, it will start at 1. The range of the counter, it will start at 1 and it will finish at 5. And the increment step here for the range to increase from one variable to another one is +1. So this is our step, is +1. So if you are going to code this example using this format for the for next, it will be for int x will be equal to, it will start from 1 to, it will end at 5 with a step of 1. So the step is +1. But as I said before that, if the increment is only by 1, step 1 can be deleted. It will be by default, if you don't type step, the increment will be by +1. And let's have a very simple statement by which let's show the output of the integer x increasing from 1 to 5 in a list box. So the code for this one will be lst.items.add of the variable int x. That's it. And then since we have opened the block of 4, we need to close it with the next. So it will be next, and we'll use the same variable int x. And by running this program, it will show the numbers will be all the 5 numbers listed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as we see it here. Let's do a live example, and let's see how we can code the for next loop. Let's have a very simple program. We need a list box and a button. So the button, let's call it, let's text it as process. And the list box, let's name it as lst x for the variable x we're going to use. And the form, this is a main form, so let's rename it. rm say main form, and text it as a main. That's it, that's our GUI. And then let's add the code in the process button. We're going to have one variable, so the declaration for that variable as an integer, so dim int x will be as an integer. And let's create our loop, and let's have our loop from 1, let's double the number of the examples, so let's say from 1 to 10. So for int, that's our counter, we name it as int x, will be equal to, starting number is 1, 2, and we end the range with the ending number 10. As I said, that step, if it is an increment of +1, you can ignore it because the default is 1, so I can ignore it since the increment will be only by +1. That's it. And the next is appeared to us, but to be more specific, let's say it is next int x to close the loop of the for. The statement is just to show the this variable counter in the list box. So we called it lst, the list box, we called it lstx dot items dot add the variable int x, and that's it. We are done. So let's go and run this program. We should see the numbers from 1 to 10 listed here, and here we are, it is from 1 to 10. For more clarification, let's see how the VB conducted the code. As soon as we execute the codes, the first line here it says, okay, we need the integer x will have values from 1 to 10 with an increment of +1. As we said, it is a step that no need to type it. By default, it is an increment of +1. So the first value of the integer of the int x will be assigned as number 1. The second line of statement of code will be executed by taking this value of x, which is now is 1, and it will show it in the list box, and that's why you see it here as 1. When it comes to the next x means now the previous value before this line it was 1. When it comes to this line, it will add the increment, so it will be this number 1, the previous value, plus 1. So the new value will be equal 2. So the int x now becomes 2. And it will go up again, but it will check first, is 2 within the range between 1 and 10? Yes, it is. If it is within the range, then it will assign the int x as 2. So now the int x becomes 2, is no more 1, it becomes 2, and it will show it here as number 2 in the list box. So this line of code will be executed by showing the new value for the int x as 2. It will go to the third line. So now it was the value of int x was 2. When it comes for next, which means it will add to it an increment of +1. So now the new value of int becomes 3. And this 3 value, it will come back to the first line. And the first question will be asked, is 3 between 1 and 10? Yes, it is. Then it will assign it here, and then 3 plus 1, 4, and so on, until when int becomes 9. Then 9 plus 1 is 10, within the range. Then we can see that all the number is here listed from 1 to 10. When the int x becomes 10, it will come to the next integer x, next value of the x. It will be 10 plus 1, which is 11. It will go to the first line. So the first condition to be asked is 11 is the 11 in the range between 1 and 10? No, it is not. Then it will stop